Hello everyone, Gilligan Kruger 0829 here, and welcome to the second day of my Spider-Man movie series marathon review. Today we'll be looking at the first sequel to the smash hit film from 2002, this one simply titled Spider-Man 2. Yes, 2 years after the success of the first, director Sam Raimi decided to helm the sequel. Does it live up to or even surpass the original in terms of quality? Well, there's quite a lot to talk about, so let's just sling right in. So, as this movie starts, we learn that Peter is actually facing the hardships of being a superhero. He's having financial issues, he's losing jobs, he's having trouble keeping up with college work, and worst of all, he's having trouble maintaining his relationship with his now girlfriend, Mary Jane. Because of this, Peter is half considering whether he should either drop the Spider-Man act entirely and lead a normal life, or continue being a superhero. But that's not all he has to worry about. You see, Harry, now the head of Oscorp and still has a grudge against Spider-Man under the misconception that he killed his father, is funding the research of a scientist named Dr. Otto Octavius. Going to say it right. He's played by Alfred Molina. You see, Octavius's goal is to perfect nuclear fusion, and what he plans to do is use these 4 mechanical arms to essentially harness the power of the sun, as he puts it. Unfortunately, the experiment goes horribly wrong. Octavius's wife is killed, and he's left penniless. But he's determined to complete his experiment, so he becomes the evil Dr. Octopus and decides to steal money and supplies to get his experiment working. And the rest of the movie follows both his quest to perfect his experiment and Peter's angst and drama about what he wants to do with the rest of his life. Now, Spider-Man was met with pretty good critical reception and, no surprise, was a box office smash. But what shocks me so much is I hear people, even today, that say this one is actually better than the original. And at first, when this movie came out, I said, no way, it doesn't have a cool origin story or anything. But, as I got older, I started to understand what people saw in this film. And heck, I kind of agree with them for the most part now. There's a lot of good stuff that was done better than it was in the original, and there's a lot of new stuff too. But let's start with the stuff that was good from the original. The action in this, it's still enjoyably hammy. There's a fight where Peter and Dr. Octopus are going at it on top of a train, and there's a fight where they're going at it while climbing a tower. There's even one scene where this one secretary woman runs and screams at the camera. That's stupid, enjoyably fun, so I love that kind of stuff. And the characters, though, I think are what really drives this movie through, because they're more likable, I think, this time around. Peter is not as much of a jackass or a whiner baby. He still has some cry moments, don't get me wrong, but I think he takes this whole superhero thing a little more seriously, and his regular life thing really seriously. That leads to some interesting drama. And who I really like in this movie, though, is Harry, because he's a much more drawn-out character. Mainly because of the grudge he has against Spider-Man. Like, there's one scene where Spider-Man saves him from the experiment I was telling you about earlier, and he just looks him in the eye and says, "This doesn't solve anything between us." And I'm like, wow, that was really well delivered. I thought Franco really drove that out well. And while we all know it's a misunderstanding, Spider-Man didn't really kill Norman Osborn, we can understand the anger he's going through. We've gone through stuff like that before, and it's very believable. Again, props to Franco. I really thought he did well with this. And another character I really like, he's a new addition, is Otto Octavius, for a few reasons. As far as villains in the original trilogy go, I think this guy is probably the best, mainly because he's not really super, he just has these mechanical arm things, and that kind of makes him a bit more complex, because, again, we all have been through what he's going through. We've all had things we've been really obsessed with finishing and really wanted to get through. Now, granted, we don't all go to the lengths he goes through, but it's understandable, and that's not the only reason I like him, though. mainly here, I really got the sense that he was supposed to be the sort of role model and even kind of father figure to Peter, which they kind of did with William Dafoe in the first movie, but I thought they did it well here because, again, they're both scientists. They both want to invent. They both take on arachnid sort of names, per se, but I just thought it was done better here, and it makes it all the more tragic when we see what happens in the end. But that's only the characters. What about the new direction this movie takes? The backbone of this movie is essentially Peter's debate over whether he should be Spider-Man or just drop it altogether. And for the most part, I thought Raimi handled that very well. There are a few things here and there, but most of the scenes really feel dramatic, and yeah, I was just really surprised with the new direction they were going through. Again, wasn't all too fond of it at first, but as I watched it more, it got better. Unfortunately, though, I do think it's the main problem to this film as well. Now, this is kind of like a seed problem, as I've said before. It's not really so much that it's bad on its own, but it just leads to other issues. The real thing that I think is funny, though, is that this is the polar opposite, essentially, of the first film. While that tried a little bit too hard to be a superhero movie, there were times where I was actually confused and thinking, is this a superhero movie? Because there's so much drama in some places. I'm actually wondering, wait a minute, Spider-Man is in this movie, right? And now, okay, let me amend on that. I think I'm probably getting it off in the wrong way. It's not nearly on the drama levels as, say, Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. Blah, that would be horrible. And it does lead to some good scenes. Like, there's one scene where Peter actually goes into a burning building, sort of similar to the time he did in the first film, only this time, it's just as him, not as Spider-Man. He goes and saves this kid from the tower. Unfortunately, he learns after that there was someone on the top floor that most likely burned, and he felt guilty that he couldn't save them. That was really good. And there's another scene where he sits down with Aunt May. Again, Rosemary Harris was great in this. And he explains to her what happened the night Uncle Ben really died. In fact, there's even a scene where we see Peter talking to Uncle Ben. I'm not sure if it's a dream, if he's just imagining it, but it's pretty dramatic just to say, no, I don't want to be Spider-Man anymore. And all of it really comes together. It's just... Some of it, to me personally, I thought really got boring. Like, the subplot between Peter and Mary Jane. Oh, God. That... Again, I'm still not a huge fan of her character, and this didn't help at all. But, yeah, that dragged on. So, what else do I have to say about this movie? Because that pretty much sums it up. Because, yeah, I will admit some of the drama goes on at times, but, in the end, I do think the action is still enjoyably hammy, the characters are a lot more drawn out, and while the direction does lead to some problems, it is nice to see this done in a superhero movie. I'm sure they've done this in other superhero movies, but this was the one that I really thought nailed it down perfectly. Okay, well, not perfectly, but the best I've seen it personally. I've finally come to see why so many people have actually said this is better than the original. Myself, I still don't agree with it completely. I still like the first one a little bit more, but I think it's more than enough to give them the same rating. And that's why I'm giving Spider-Man 2 3.5 stars out of 5. You can find all my movie reviews on my YouTube channel. If you have a movie you'd like me to review, comment on this video or on my channel. Subscribe if you like, and until next time, peace!